Hello everyone, Professor Cicerelli. In this video, I want to talk to you about run-on sentences, comma splices, which is another kind of run-on, and we'll get into that. Before you watch this video, you should absolutely watch my video on fragments. I'll link it up here, but you should absolutely watch that video on fragments, because in a way, sentence fragments are kind of the opposite mistake of run-on sentences. If you think of run-on sentences as too much information, fragments are not enough. So you should absolutely watch that fragment video. It would also help you to watch the video on nouns, pronouns, and verbs, and I'll link that video up there as well. Make sure you check that one out too. But let's begin. So run-on sentences, there is a big misconception when it comes to run-on sentences. People think that run-on sentences are long sentences. That in order to have a run-on sentence, it's got to be, like 3 lines long or something like that. That's not true. That's somebody who doesn't understand a grammar rule and is just sort of winging it and trying to give grammar advice when maybe they're not sure what the rules are. All that a run-on sentence is, and jot this down, but all a run-on sentence is two or more independent clauses with nothing joining them, with nothing connecting them. Okay, that's all that a run-on sentence is. Okay, so it doesn't have to be a long sentence. Okay, if I had the following as two sentences, just one sentence smashed together, I walked, she ran, and there was nothing separating I walked from she ran, that is a run-on sentence. Okay, because I walked is a complete sentence, subject, verb, independent clause, and she ran is also an independent clause, subject, verb. Okay? And if I have nothing joining them, then I've got a fragment. Oh, sorry, I've got a run-on. And they need to be fixed. So just remember that. Run-on sentence is not a long sentence. A run-on sentence is two independent clauses, 2 or more independent clauses with nothing connecting them. Okay? That's a run-on. A comma splice, think of a comma splice as a variation on a run-on sentence. It's also a run-on that needs to be fixed. Except with a comma splice, what you're doing is you're trying to connect 2 independent clauses with just a comma. Okay, you cannot connect 2 independent clauses with just a comma. Okay? The comma is only a short, subtle pause. What you need between 2 independent clauses is another kind of punctuation mark, and we'll talk about what that is. But I mean, I think you all know at least a period, but we can talk about some other possibilities too. So as your book tells you here, comma splice, you've got 2 independent clauses, 2 or more connected with a comma. So look here, you've got T.S. Eliot is best known for his poetry. Okay. Complete thought, yes, T.S. Eliot is my subject. What's my verb? It's the verb to be. Right? So complete thought, subject, verb. And then also, he, subject, wrote, verb. Okay? And then the object are the plays. Okay? So even though T.S. Eliot's my verb over here, my subject over here, he is my subject over here, even though they're referring to the same person, he grammatically is a new subject. Still talking about T.S. Eliot, same thing, but he grammatically is a subject. So I cannot just have these 2 complete thoughts smashed together with a comma. Doesn't work. Nor would I be able to have them just run into each other without the comma. Okay? I need to have something else. Okay? If there were no comma here at all, then it would just be a regular run-on. Your book uses the term fused sentence, same thing. It just means they're smashed together. Okay, so how do you, first step is you got to identify that you have a run-on sentence or a comma splice. Okay, if you can't do the identifying part, you're not going to know how to fix the problem. You first need to be able to identify that it is a problem and that where you need to divide the sentences up. And that what that means is you've got to figure out where your independent clauses are. If you don't know how to identify independent clauses, this is going to be a problem, which is why I said you got to go back and watch that video. Okay? So I know from looking at this sentence that I've got one independent clause here, that it ends with poetry. Poetry is my object of my prepositional phrase here. It ends there, my complete thought, and then a new thought begins. Okay, once I know that, I know where to divide them. Once I know where to divide them, now I just need to know how to divide them, and then I'm good to go. Okay. So how do you make that? How do you make that fix? Your book makes some suggestions for you. I think they're all good. I have nothing to add here when it comes to how to fix run-on sentences or comma splices. I have nothing to add here. Your book is good. Your book is good on this point. So one way you can make the easy fix is make the clauses separate sentences. Okay. Your book, the first suggestion here is, first suggestion here is put a period here. Capitalize he, you've now got two separate sentences. Okay. You could also, your book suggests, keep the comma, if the comma is there, and just add a coordinating conjunction. Remember back to what coordinating conjunctions were. It's in that preposition conjunction video. Okay, coordinating conjunctions and, but, or, so, for, yet. So just keep the comma, but add the coordinating conjunction, and that coordinating conjunction is always going to come after the comma, not before it. So you'll notice I could say T.S. Eliot is best known for his poetry, comma, and he also wrote several plays. Could fix it that way. Okay, look at the way your book fixes this sentence. Okay. The school board debated the issue for 3 days. Complete thought. School board is my subject, debated is my verb, the issue is the object. Complete thought. They were unable to reach an agreement. Also a complete thought. They, subject, were, verb. Okay? So I've got to separate them somehow. Could I make those two separate sentences? Yes, but your book suggests, again, using comma and coordinating conjunction, and they use but here. The school board debated the issue for 3 days, comma, but they were unable to reach an agreement. The one other way you could do this, the book gives you 4 ways, they're all great. Another way you could do this is to join them with a semicolon. Okay. Semicolon, remember, period with comma underneath. Many people don't use that punctuation mark because they're not sure how to use it. That's how you use the semicolon, is for connecting two independent clauses. And your book tells you here wisely that the relationship between those independent clauses should be clear. Okay. That they're not too radically different topics from one independent clause to the next, right? That there's some connection between them, because that semicolon is going to be, pause-wise, it's probably a little bit longer of a pause than a comma, but not much more. So you're going right from one independent clause to the next with a semicolon. There's not really a pause there like with a period. So if those two independent clauses are radically different, then you might run into an issue using a semicolon. But if they are similar, then you can definitely use semicolon there. And that's something you should practice using. Okay, so look at the sentence they have. Psychologists study individuals' behavior. Complete sentence, independent clause, yes. Psychologists, subject, study, verb, individual's behavior is my object. Okay. So complete thought. Sociologists, new subject. What do? Verb, they focus on group dynamics. Okay. So I've got two complete sentences, two independent clauses, but they're kind of related. They're both talking about the skills or the focus of each of these different professions. And so you could join them with a semicolon, that would work. And where you would divide them would be right here, right where one independent clause ends and the next one begins. Okay. Yeah, your book talks to you about if you have transition words like therefore, however, and you're using them with a semicolon, that you should use a comma after them. So if you have one independent clause, semicolon, therefore another independent clause, just put a comma after the therefore, put a comma after a however. It's just a little reminder there. The last way that you can connect to complete the last way you could fix a run-on or a comma splice is your book tells you could recast or turn one of the independent clauses into a dependent clause, because then dependent clause needs to be connected to an independent clause. I don't need a period or any kind of other punctuation mark. I could just connect them with a simple comma. If I make one of them subordinate, make one of them a dependent clause. So if we looked at so look at, I mean, we could look at this sentence here. They're both independent clauses. I could turn one of these into a dependent clause. I could say, although, so remember I'm using that subordinating word or that subordinating conjunction, remember? Although psychologists study individuals' behavior, comma, sociologists focus on group level dynamics. Okay, so I've made the first one, wherever I'm putting the although, I've made that psychologists study individuals' behavior, I've made that my dependent clause followed by my independent. If I put my although there. Look at how they fix it here. Initial critical responses to The Wasteland, that's a T.S. Eliot poem, were mixed. Complete thought. The poem has been extensively anthologized, read, and written about. Okay. So what do we got here? So I turn one of these. This is a complete thought. Poem has been extensively anthologized, read, and written about. Okay. This also, I don't mean to highlight the correction, but initial critical responses were mixed. That's also independent, complete thought. And I've got just a comma here. So with just a comma by itself, I've got a comma splice and I need to fix it. We've already talked about some fixes. I can make this a semicolon. I could put a period here. I could do comma and. Or, lastly, I could turn one of those into a dependent clause. Okay. Although initial critical responses to The Wasteland were mixed, the poem has been extensively anthologized, read, and written about. Okay. And although stresses there's a contrast, despite the fact that people were critical of it and didn't like the poem at first, it's been written about since, and etc. Okay, so let's look at some exercises. And what we're going to do with these exercises is pick sentences that don't have comma splice, that are not comma splices, and are not run-ons. Okay, we want the correct sentence of these three here. Okay, so let's look at the first one. How about that one? Leave it in the comments. I see a problem with that first one. You see a problem with that first one? Is it a run-on? Mm-hmm. It is. Now, here's the question. If it's a run-on, then that means it fits our definition of a run-on, which is two or more independent clauses smashed together. So where are my independent clauses? Where's my first one? Where's my second one? Okay, let's look. The sculptor Alexander Calder gives his years. Gained fame. Sculptor Alexander Calder, subject. Verb, gained. Fame, object. For his mobiles and wire sculptures of circuses. Complete thought. Notice, he. If I see he and there's nothing before it, no comma and, nothing before, he is telling you I've got a new subject. He is still talking about Alexander Calder here, but grammatically it is a new subject. I need to have something to connect these two, period, comma and, semicolon, something, but I've got a run-on here. Okay, so I don't want to click this one, because if I do, it's going to tell me no good. Okay. What about this one? Let's look at it. Leave it down below in the comments. You think it's a good one? I see a problem with it. Okay. Even without reading the whole sentence, I can tell something is going on here. Problem here, because I have she, which is a new subject, and all I've got before it is a comma. That tells me there's likely a comma splice here. Likely a comma splice. How can I test and see whether there's actually a comma splice? Do I have two independent clauses? Let's find out. The painter Mary Cassatt, subject. What's my verb? Was born. Was is my helping verb. Born is my participle. We're partnering with my helping verb. In Pennsylvania, but spent many years, so more, another verb phrase attached here. But spent many years in Paris, where the Impressionists thrived. Complete thought. Where the Impressionists thrived is this is a relative. Where is my relative pronoun? You call this a relative clause here, which is describing or modifying modifying Paris. It's telling you information about Paris. Okay, but still, it's one complete thought here, and I've got a new subject, new verb, chose, women and children, object. Okay, can't have just a comma here. Here I've got a comma splice. I don't want to click this one because if I do, problem. Okay. The last one, let's see. Feminist artist Judy Chicago creates multimedia projects. Complete thought, and I've got a period there. Her best known work is The Dinner Party, which explores women's history. Okay, which, remember if you go back and watch that the video on, I think, pronouns, we've got that, which, who, and whom. Those are relative pronouns. Which is a relative pronoun. Here I've got a relative phrase describing the dinner party. But still, it's a complete thought after the period. Her best known work, subject, verb, is, and then the dinner party is. It's not an object. This would be an example of her best known work is the dinner party. The dinner party, this would be an example of the, actually I won't tell you. It's not subject, verb, object. It's subject, verb, subject. What's that called? If you remember what that's called, leave it in the comments, and I'll be super impressed if you get that one right. I'll give you a clue. It starts with, it's two words. First word is P. Second word starts with an N. N as in Nancy. Okay. All right, so if you look at this one, absolutely two complete sentences separated with a period. This is our good sentence. This is the one we want. Okay. Let's do one more real quick. Stuart Davis borrowed Cubism from European artists and made it American. His paintings present bright colors. I think you notice there's something up here. His paintings is a new subject. I've got a run-on here. I should divide it right here. Known for glass-covered boxes filled with enigmatically arranged found objects and collages, Joseph Cornell was a product of surrealism, which relied on irrational juxtaposition. You might be thinking, comma, do I have a comma splice here? No, because do I have an independent, complete thought after the comma? No, I don't. I have which relied on irrational juxtaposition. I just have a relative phrase, it's a verb phrase really, connected to telling you information about surrealism, adjective information about surrealism. But it's not a complete thought. So this would not be an example of a comma splice. I don't see any run-ons here, so let's hang on. Let's look at the last one, see if we find any problems. John Singleton Copley was a master portraitist and painter of historical scenes. That's a complete thought. Subject, verb, master portraitist and painter. Also, example of subject, verb, subject. Leave it down below if you know what it is. But complete thought here. His works, new subject, are considered as my verb, considered as my participle, partnered with my helping verb, are. So I've got a complete thought here after the comma, which means I've got a comma splice. So I can't go with the first one, can't go with the third one. I've got to go with the middle one. Okay. All right. So give this last one a try. Have a look at it. Oh, my video's cutting out. Oh, hang on. I'll give you one where I'm not blocking the. I'll pick this one. Okay, do this one. Okay, where you could see. Okay, so have a look at this one and decide which is the sentence that does not have a comma splice or a run-on, and leave your comment down below for me. Okay, thanks everybody.